Hello everyone, my name is Gabby, and today I'm going to be bringing you my review of Queen of Air and Darkness by Cassandra Clare, the third and final book in the Dark Artifices series. Oh my gosh, am I so excited to finally dive in and discuss all of my thoughts, opinions, feelings, and emotions with all of you. This review has been on the top of my priority list of videos to film, and I'm so glad that I'm finally getting the opportunity to sit down and film it and to discuss this finale with all of you. As you all may know, I've been incredibly busy with my senior year of high school, which has made it so difficult to sit down and film videos. And then when it came time for me to want to actually sit down and film this video, I got super overwhelmed with how I was going to begin to craft this review and organize it, because if you cannot tell, this book is huge and there is so much that goes on within it, so I had no idea where I was going to even begin to discuss everything. And so as I was taking notes, I just got so overwhelmed by everything that happens in this book because there's so much that goes down. But I think I'm finally ready to discuss with all of you, so if you have not read Queen of Air and Darkness yet, go and read it. If you're still reading the Shadowhunter Chronicles, go and catch up. You need to read the entirety of the Mortal Instrument series, the entirety of the Infernal Devices, and the entirety of the Dark Artifices in order to watch this review, because I'm going to be discussing all the things Shadowhunter Chronicles. So if you don't want to get spoiled, go and catch up, and then you can come back and we can discuss together. But with that being said, I just want to dive right into discussing this behemoth. So if you haven't read Queen of Air and Darkness yet, go and finish it. So I'm going to say goodbye then, non-spoiler people, and I hope you guys enjoy Queen of Air and Darkness. Alright, so let's begin. I'm going to structure this review by discussing each couple and their plotline, because I think that's just the easiest way to do it, and easiest way to make sure that I hit all of the bases and discuss everyone that I want to discuss. So starting with Julian and Emma, because they are our protagonists of the Dark Artifices series, obviously the big thing that we need to discuss is this Parabatai curse, because oh my gosh. So I'm going to be honest, I definitely wasn't expecting that ending. It felt very reminiscent to the ending of Clockwork Princess, which I loved, but it was just insane. Like, I thought Emma was gonna die when she got stabbed, and then they turned into the original Shadowhunters, and they just burst into these giant, flaming, heavenly fire monsters, and are just killing people left and right, just savagely, with, like, no conception of what it is that they're actually doing. The entire Blackthorn family tries to stop them, and it's really not working, and then they just collapse, and they wake up in the infirmary, and Jem comes and talks to them, and they find out that their Parabatai bond was severed, and that they can be together, and it's such an emotional moment. But I think my thoughts on this are very similar to what most people's thoughts on the conclusion to this Parabatai curse is, which is that it was kind of underwhelming. Like, obviously the whole, like, heavenly fire giants thing, like, nobody could have predicted that. But I think the fact that Emma and Julian get off without any consequences or any repercussions is kind of a little bit unbelievable. Like, even the fact that, like, other people in the Shadowhunter community, like, whether it be Clave members or just other Shadowhunters, are kind of like, hey, this happened and it's fine and we're not gonna do anything. That felt unbelievable to me. I was like, somebody's gonna have to be upset about this, and nobody really was. I really don't know how I feel about that, and I think that if there were gonna be any repercussions or any side effects or anything from this happening, we would have seen it foreshadowed towards the end of Queen of Air and Darkness, because this is the end of Emma and Julian's story, so if we were going to hint at anything, we would hint at it now for it to later be developed to the Wicked Powers, and I didn't see anything that would suggest that they would be facing any consequences, so that ending kind of ended how it did. But I did predict that this entire Parabatai curse would essentially be a fake out, and I predicted that in my Lord of Shadows review, so if you want to go and check that out, the link will be down below. So I felt very proud of that, because almost everyone thought that this Parabatai curse was going to be huge and catastrophic, and I was like, nah, it just probably made up, and I was so happy to have hit that nail right on the head. It felt like being a super Carlin brother for a few moments, and it kind of made me feel very proud that I knew Cassie's books well enough to predict something that most people hadn't predicted, because there's a lot of things that happen in this book that were exciting and, like, big reveals, but they were things that we as a fandom had kind of predicted and kind of accepted to be true that were just confirmed in this book. So predicting this felt really big for me, because nobody was thinking that the Parabatai curse was going to be a fake out. I feel like, really, besides myself, if you guys thought that and would like to let me know in the comments, definitely make sure you do that. But I felt proud to have known Cassie's books well enough to be able to figure that out, so that was a very happy moment for me. But, like, the rest of that plotline, like, wasn't too happy with. Let's talk about Julian, because, Julian, I could not stand him in this book. Like, he goes to Magnus to have the spell put on him to remove his emotions, and it's so horrible, because one, Magnus is sick with this warlock sickness, and he decides to go to Magnus anyway. Magnus puts a stupid curse on him, and then Julian can't be there for Ty when Ty needs him, and that's just a mess, and then he's just not himself. He does some things that are really horrible, like killing Dane Larkspear, and while, like, in the end it worked out for him because he ends up freeing the Kelpie, and the Kelpie ends up coming back in the end, he's not Julian. And then once he gets the curse taken off of him, or the spell taken off of him, and he comes up with this whole game plan, like, that's when you see the Julian that you know and love, and I feel like we didn't get to see enough of him, but I loved that Julian who's planning this entire thing, and who anticipates that there's going to be someone that is going to infiltrate them and is going to be a traitor, and so then he plans around that, and you have this whole big thing that happens at the battle where there's this total fake out with Jason Claire. Like, all of that was just so epic, and seeing Julian plan all of that out, like, that was a Julian that I knew and loved and liked seeing in Queen of Air and Darkness. But like the other Julian, I just didn't like him. Let's move on to Christina, Mark, and Kiernan, because I love them so much. And there were a couple that initially I was sort of like about in the first two books, like I really wasn't feeling it, but this book does so much for their characters. So let's talk about where they end up. So Mark gets to help run the Shadowhunter Downworlder Alliance in New York City and get to sort of be like on the Seelie side of things, which I think is great, and I believe Christina is going to be helping out with that too, but she is going back to her hometown to be with her family, obviously since her travel year is up. And then Kiernan, his ending is obviously the most spectacular. He gets to be the Unseelie Queen, which is going to be super helpful come time for the Wicked Powers, because we are going to need him, because the Seelie Queen is doing some shady stuff that I don't approve of, so we'll talk about that epilogue and everything a little bit later on. But I love Christina, Kiernan, and Mark. I think the relationship is so beautiful, and one of the things I love about Cassie's books that I kind of want to talk about is this theme of like love trumps all or love wins, and it can be a very repetitive theme, but I think it's so persistent in Cassie's books because it shows that these couples have to overcome obstacle after obstacle after obstacle after obstacle, and love still manages to win in the end, and that's really, really beautiful. And it's true for like every single one of her couples in this series, and I just love it so much. And I think it really hit me with Christina, Mark, and Kiernan because their relationship is so atypical, and it could be similar to Will, Tessa, and Jem's relationship in the fact that it's like three people that are in the relationship, but I think it's also incredibly different. I love the relationship so much, and I really wasn't feeling much for Kiernan in the first two books, and then I just came to love and adore him, and I just, the three of them together are so great. And it's so weird because normally I wouldn't be here for polyamorous relationships. Like, I just don't think it's something that I've read a lot about, something that I've really been exposed to that much, and I don't think I know that type of relationship that well to feel like I would understand it, but this book completely changed that for me. I just love them so much, and I'm so happy for them and where they end up. I'm so excited to see Kiernan as the Unseelie Queen in the Wicked Powers. I adore him now, and I think, again, he's going to be incredibly helpful when that series comes around, and I think he's going to do a great job, but I obviously don't want him to be the Unseelie King forever, so we're going to have to figure out some way for all of them to be able to be together. Obviously, we have the cottage, which I love the fact that they're going to have this cute cottage where they're going to be able to be together. It just makes me so happy, and I want, like, some short story of them in the cottage. Like, I need something with them in that cottage because I just need it, because it just made me so happy. There's so many cute scenes with them, and I just had so much fun reading them. Like, so much, not so much their plot, but just their romance is what I really, really loved in this book, and it was so well developed, and I think you finally got to see all of it, because really, you were hinting at it in the first two books, but Queen of Air and Darkness is really the one where you build this entire polyamorous relationship, and you sort of get to see it come to fruition. It was just so well written and so beautiful. I loved it so much, and it made me so happy to get to read, and to get to see these characters get to grow on me, characters that I didn't think I was originally going to like, and just within the course of one book, seeing how strong of an attachment I now have to them. Okay, so let's talk about Kit and Ty, because obviously they're a very, very essential part of Queen of Air and Darkness. We have this necromancy plotline with Ty wanting to raise Livy. So Livy obviously dies at the end of Lord of Shadows, and everyone is immediately thinking, like, Ty is going to have to struggle so much having to grieve Livy and having to move on and having to learn to be without her. Like, he is going to struggle. And the entirety of Queen of Air and Darkness is like, LOL, never mind. And Ty is just convinced, like, Livy's not dead. I'm going to bring her back to life. I'm going to raise her from the dead. And it just, it made me so angry because Ty, why? Like, I think the thing that makes me more frustrated is the fact that Kit gets involved in this. Obviously, he wants to be there for Ty. He wants to help him. He wants to be a supportive friend because he sees that Ty is struggling, and he goes along with all of this in their Watson and Holmes type fashion. When it gets to the very, very, very end, like they've gotten in everything that they need to raise Livy, Kit goes to Ty and he's like, I love you, but you can't do this. This is going to be so bad. It may not work out, and is trying to talk him out of it. And Ty just completely and entirely disregards everything Kit says, and it made me so upset. So I'm like, Kit revealed his love for Ty and like openly spoke out about his emotions, and Ty just ignored him. And obviously I understand that Ty is really, really struggling and he just has a different way of expressing it, but still, and maybe Ty didn't realize that Kit meant it in the way that he did, but it just, that scene devastated me. It was not helpful that Ragnar fell, essentially, like did nothing to stop this. So that was another reveal that we got in Queen of Air and Darkness, which is that Ragnar fell is alive. Quick sidebar, there's this moment during the battle where Ragnar has a shirt on that says something along the lines of like Ragnar lives, which I thought was hilarious and such a great moment of comedic relief and levity. Love that. I love the fact that he's alive, and yes, obviously Ragnar Fell does try to stop this as much as he possibly can, but he felt essentially useless because obviously Livy ends up getting resurrected anyway. I believe, and I don't know if this is a connection that we're supposed to make, but because Livy ends up getting resurrected, the portal to Tool is opened on Earth, and so that's how Tool, Jace, and Ash are able to end up to Earth or end up in the Seelie Court, which is where we see them in the epilogue of Queen of Air and Darkness, which I will again talk about more later on. But Magnus mentioned something about like, oh, you better hope that there isn't any repercussions, and so I'm assuming that the epilogue is that repercussion, so I'm assuming you're supposed to make that connection, but I don't know. That happens now, and Livy is now connected to Ty, so everywhere Ty goes, Livy's going to follow him, and I just think that's not going to be good for him because he's not going to be able to be without her now, and he needs to be able to move on, and he's not going to be able to, so I think that's going to be a huge issue in the Wicked Powers that is going to have to be discussed and developed upon. And now we have the ending of Queen of Air and Darkness for Kit and Ty, and they are separated, which I think is interesting. Ty is going to end up going to the Skull and Mance, which is what he originally wanted to do, and Kit is going to be with Tessa and Jem, and honestly, I think this is a perfect ending. I'm very, very happy that these two characters are apart and are going to, I believe, be starting the Wicked Powers apart because they just need that time to be able to grow and develop on their own and then be able to come back together because this book did just not end well for them. I think it's going to be good for Ty to go to the Skull and Mance, to be able to train to be a Shadow Hunter, to be able to have some time to himself, to be able to grieve, be able to move on, and be able to get through this thing with Livy. And I think it's good for Kit that he's with Tessa and Jem because obviously him being a descendant of the first heir, he is going to need Jem and Tessa's knowledge to be able to protect him, to help him hone in on whatever special abilities he has. We see that one moment during the battle where he like raises his hands and like a beam of light comes out and like takes out all of these evil fae. I don't know, I'm forgetting their names right now. It's been a few months since I've read this book. The riders of something. Yeah, okay, never mind. Ugh. But I think they're gonna have knowledge on how to be able to deal with that, how to be able to help him, and I think that that's essential that Kit has that, and he also has a family that wants to take care of him and loves him because I don't think he's really had that, and I think that's going to be very good for him to have. Also, Tess is pregnant, which is the greatest reveal ever. Obviously, you do find that out in the Ghost of the Shadow Market. I have not read it yet because I just wanted the full bind up, but I know that like once I go back and read it, like I'll be able to put the pieces together of things that were revealed in that book that we find out also in Queen of Air and Darkness. Oh, I'm so happy she's pregnant and her and Jem are going to have kids. I think that's so interesting, especially now going in and reading the new series that's going to be coming out that focuses on Tessa and Will's children, to know that Tessa and Jem are going to have kids. Like, I just think that's so interesting and I just love it so much. I'm very excited to see this baby because I know a lot of people are thinking that it's going to have some significance. Like, you wouldn't just have a baby for the sake of having a baby. Like, this child is going to have to be super powerful. So I'm excited to see what Cassie has planned because I have no idea what is going on there, but other than the fact that this just makes my heart very, very, very happy. So we'll see where that goes, but I'm super excited for it. I think that Kit and Ty are going to have a very, very interesting journey ahead of them in the Wicked Powers, and Queen of Air and Darkness and everything that goes on in this book and their plotline definitely proves that. I want to talk about Annabelle because I was super disappointed with her character. I finished Lord of Shadows and I had this whole full-out theory about Annabelle and like what was going on with her, and it was super ridiculous. And eventually what we end up finding out in Queen of Air and Darkness is like, oh, Annabelle's just drawn to Ash because of some ability that he has because of like his bloodline and what the Unseelie King wanted to use him for, and she's just insane. Like there's no explanation, and I felt super upset because I felt like there had to be some reason why she was with the Unseelie King, and I just felt like there were so many unanswered questions surrounding her character and so much lack of development, and it made me a little bit disappointed. Another thing that we find out about Ash that's obviously something that we've kind of assumed is that he is the son of Sebastian Morgenstern and the Seelie Queen, so he has a lot of different blood in him, which I think makes him super interesting. He also has wings, which I think is really weird, but he's going to be very, very interesting, and I'm very excited to see where his character goes in the Wicked Powers because I have no idea what to feel about Ash. I don't know if he's good or if he's bad, if he's gonna be an anti-hero. I have no idea because we know a lot about him, but we haven't seen him so much as a character in terms of the way that he behaves. But it's interesting to see when Julian and Emma are in Toul and Ash is inspired by something that is said by Emma or Julian, I believe Emma, about Clary, and that's why he helps them. I thought that was really interesting because that's, I think, one of the most standout things about his character that we've seen thus far. I'm interested to see more of Ash, but the fact that Annabelle is so drawn to him I thought was interesting. Annabelle ends up dying in Toul. You thought that she was alive later on, but then you find out that that's just a demon that disguises her, and that demon also can't be killed by Seraph blades, so that's interesting. I feel like there's a lot of stuff going on there that, again, we're going to need to see more explanation for in the Wicked Powers, so there's all of that. We can talk about Diego and Jaime really quickly. So I think the biggest thing that I want to talk about here is that Diego is going to potentially end up becoming the new Inquisitor, which I think is interesting. I definitely would have expected that, but I think he's going to be a good person to play that role or be in that position. So we just have a thing with Inquisitors dying, and so that worries me a little bit, but I think he's going to be good for the position, and I'm very excited to see what happens with that whole new world, which we will talk about in a little bit. But I also like the fact that he took care of Kiernan for Christina because he loved and cared about her so much to do that, and seeing the fact that he isn't all arrogance and like swagger and is not so much the stereotype that he was made out to be in the first few books, and he was again another character that I really didn't like so much in the first two books in the series that did come to grow on me. Definitely not so much as like Christina, Kiernan, and Mark, but definitely it grew on me to the point where I feel like it's significant to point out. And then obviously we have Jaime and Drew, and there was a little bit of sparks between them initially, so we were thinking maybe they were going to end up together, but Jaime ends up sort of stepping away from that, and we sort of see Drew being more like, I'm going to be happy with who I am, and I don't need no man, and I like that. There's people that are shipping Drew and Ash together and Drew and Jaime together, so I don't know if that's like a love triangle at all, but just something that's like happening and people are discussing, but I would like Drew to end up being single. I would like to be able to see a female character that is just happy being in her own skin and doesn't need a relationship. We'll have to see where that goes, but I like the fact that as for right now that she's single and she's just confident in her own skin, because I think that's really what her character development is leaning towards, is seeing this girl who's sort of always wanted to be a part of the action, is wanted to help out, who's super strong and powerful, that's sort of been neglected and put off to the side. So her sort of coming into her own skin and finding her confidence and not necessarily needing anybody else to do that for her, because I love getting to see her learn how to pick locks from Kit and then using that in the battle and being able to free Diego and Jaime. I thought that scene was great, and I loved that, and I love Drew as a character. I want to see more from her because I feel like she is a character that's sort of been off to the side but does have a lot of power and potential, so I definitely want to see more from her in the Wicked Powers, and I'm going to be very excited to see where she goes as a character because I think there's a lot of strength in her that we have not seen yet. So now we have Diana. I love her and Gwen together. I think they're absolutely adorable. And one of the things that really shocked me about Diana in the end of Lord of Shadows, or just in Lord of Shadows in general, was the fact that she is transgender. That was something that I just didn't see coming, and I remember being really shocked finding that out, but I also thought that was great to see that character representation included within Lord of Shadows and now Queen of Air and Darkness as well. One of the big things that Diana has to go through as a character is having to come out to Emma and Julian and to the people that she loves and learning to sort of be comfortable with this choice that she's made and being able to like share it with other people openly. And I think that's really beautiful to see her coming out process, and especially in a novel like this that is a bit of an urban fantasy where there's so many other plot things going on, to be able to have a focus on that I think is really great. And I loved that moment where she does try to come out to Emma and Julian, and obviously they already found out in Thule that she was transgender, but she still has that moment to come out to them in the real world, and they're supportive of her and caring, and that was just such a beautiful, beautiful moment, and I loved it a lot. Also, a lot of respect for Diana. There's this moment where she is with Horace Dearborn, and Horace Dearborn wants Diana to side with him so that he can be the consul and the inquisitor, and she agrees to it, and then the next thing you know, she goes and hacks off his arm, jumps out the window, and Gwyn ends up picking her up, and she ends up riding off with Gwyn, and I thought that was just so beautiful and amazing and badass, and I just fell in love with their character so much more in that moment. And again, I feel like she's another character that is super underappreciated, and I feel like I came to love her so much more. There's so many characters in this book that just got a lot of development that by the time the book ended, I just felt like I had so much more of a stronger attachment to them than I ever would have had previously. Okay, so let's talk about the TMI characters and their involvement in Queen of Air and Darkness. So we have a Clary and Jace, which I was so scared because for such a large part of this book, we're like, where are Clary and Jace? Are they dead? Are they alive? What's going on? And then finally we get to see them in the Sealy Court because they've been stuck in there. They were trying to go after Ash, and from like the minute that they end up in this book to the very end, I just am obsessed with them. Okay, so here's the thing. Because I did go back and reread the Mortal Instruments series recently. I adore Clary and Jace in the Mortal Instruments series, but I think they've only gotten better with age, like a fine wine. It's just so great. Like, I think I love adult Jace more because I think he's not so angsty. Like, he's still Jace, but he's Jace with less angst. Like, it's great. And I love him and Clary. I love the short story at the end of Queen of Air and Darkness where Clary proposes to Jace, like, so beautifully with the sword and the just everything is just so great. Because obviously we were worried that Clary was going to die in Queen of Air and Darkness, and the visions that she saw were Thule, and so we're like, great, out of the woods, she's not going to die. Obviously we don't know that because the wicked powers are happening, and like, that could change everything. And now that there's Thule Jace, like, who the hell knows, because Thule Jace wants Clary, and I just like, ugh, why won't Cassie just leave them alone? Like, their book series is over, they don't need this. But I love them so much. I'm so happy that they're engaged, and I want them to get married, and I want them to be happy, and I don't think that she's going to kill either of them off, because if she does, we will riot, and I just don't see it happening. So they're going to end up being married, and it's going to be great and happy and wonderful and sunshines and rainbows. I'm just hoping, because I just want them to be happy. They've suffered enough. So obviously, there's the Malik wedding, which is like by far the greatest thing in Queen of Air and Darkness, and if you disagreed, then like, I don't know what's wrong with you, because this is just so wonderful. I'm sorry, my camera's out of focus. This is super frustrating, but my battery's about to die, so I'm just gonna like keep talking. The Malik wedding, I cried. Like, this is where I actually lost it, because I was like, oh my gosh, because I just didn't see it coming. But then Alec is like, well, I'm consul, so now I can do what I want, and so that means that I can marry Magnus, and so he does. So they have this whole beautiful beach wedding, and everyone's there, and it's super romantic and beautiful. And again, it felt like the ending of City of Heavenly Fire, because you have the wedding between Jocelyn and Luke, and now you get to see that with Magnus and Alec, and I'm so happy that they finally got married. But it also is a little bit disappointing that Alec literally needs to be consul in order to marry Magnus. Like, he needs to be able to be the boss in order to make that happen because of the prejudice that would surround it, which I think is ridiculous. But that's not so much like a problem with the writing, but just a problem with the characters in the world. But I love them. I'm so happy that they're happy. I loved that wedding. Like, everything about it was just so great. Like, that entire wedding scene, everything about it was just phenomenal. And I love Magnus and Alec. And honestly, one of the things that broke my heart the most was hearing about what happened to them in Thule, where Magnus had the warlock sickness and he was dying, and so Alec killed him and then killed himself. Like, that was just so depressing and horrifying that I just wanted to just like jump off a cliff or something, because I just like could not deal with that. So like, this Malik wedding is a much better alternative to that. Thank God, because I've been waiting for a Malik wedding forever, and I'm glad that we finally got it in this book, and I think it comes perfectly, and it didn't feel forced at all. Like, it was just perfect. And then there's Simon and Izzy, who I believe are still engaged. They were just kind of there in Queen of Air and Darkness, and I just felt so bad. Just like, I wanted more from them. So maybe we'll be seeing a wedding from them in the Wicked Powers. I don't know. We'll have to see. But there really wasn't a lot of them in this book. So now let's talk about some plot thing while we are at it, because I think I've covered all of the characters that I want to cover. So Thule. Let's talk about Thule, shall we? Because, so it's this alternate universe where, like, everything is flipped on its head. People who you thought were dead are alive, and people who you thought were alive are dead. It's just insane. Sebastian's still alive, which was horrifying, because I read that line, and then I had to close the book for, like, a solid hour, and I just, like, was so mad because I couldn't stop thinking about it. I was like, why is he still alive? And that killed me. Obviously, Thule Jace is not great. He just, like, completely and entirely severs Maris's head with, like, no thought or emotion or feeling, and that scares me. So I'm definitely very intimidated by Thule Jace. So that makes this epilogue very interesting, because usually the epilogues of conclusions to Cassie Clare books are very happy and sunshiny and just wrap up the story quite nicely, but this ends with a cliffhanger, which I definitely wasn't expecting, because this book really did not feel like a conclusion. I think a large part is because of that epilogue. So you have Thule Jace and Ash, and they come to the Seelie Queen, and Thule Jace wants Clary, and I just, because Thule Jace makes me very nervous, because I don't think he's going to be the central villain, but I definitely think that he's going to fuck up some shit, and I don't need that. My thoughts is that we're going to have this big issue where we're going to have Thule Jace and real Jace confused, and it's going to be this whole big confusing mess, and then people are going to have to find out that, like, Thule Jace is on Earth, and there's real Jace, and it's just going to be this huge confusing mess, and there's going to have to be some moment where it finally gets straightened out, and then there's like this horrifying terror of like, okay, great, now what do we do? And I'm not ready for it at all. But Livy was still alive, which I thought was great to see how she developed and how she grew up. Seeing her and Cameron together, that made me so upset, because as much as I thought it was really adorable, it also made me realize that, like, Cameron was never going to have that, because obviously he was with Emma, and that just made me very upset. It was very sad to hear how everyone else died, which just broke my heart. Again, like, I didn't like Thule because it just made my heart feel so sad. Obviously, we see Tessa in Thule, and I thought her character was interesting and how she was incorporated into this alternate universe. This entire battle that goes down in Thule. Emma and Julian get the mortal sword back, and they kill Sebastian, and Ash is there, and it's just all this craziness. Also, Raphael is still alive, but we get to hear that Magnus and Alec named one of their sons after Raphael, and so Raphael finds it out, and his reaction was just so spot on. So I was happy to get to see his character again, and that made me very happy that we got to see another appearance from him, because it was just adorable and great, and everything I wanted and more. Thule was very odd. Like, it felt like so weird to be in this like completely like second half of Queen of Air and Darkness. And I did enjoy reading it. I thought it was really interesting, and I think there's a lot of essential things that come out of Thule, but most of it just made me very, very, very upset and distraught, and I didn't like it. But I think it's interesting, and I think it's necessary, because I remember Cassie talking about the Wicked Powers being like this big, huge battle of Shadowhunters new and old, and I think Thule is going to be a huge part of that, because you're going to see a whole bunch of people from Thule, like, coming into the Shadow world, and it's going to be this huge mess of confusion and angst, and I'm so scared. But I think Queen of Air and Darkness does a great job of introducing Thule, and I think we're definitely going to see more of it in the Wicked Powers, and we're going to have some really epic battles that are going to go down in that book. So I feel like I talked a decent amount about the battle, so I'm going to skip that. The one thing I am going to mention that gave me a very, very, very mini heart attack is when Emma and Julian turn into the big fire monsters, and Emma, I believe, goes at Jace, and then he just goes flying, and then you're like, oh, and then that section ends with like, oh, he didn't wake up, and so you think that he's dead, and I almost had a heart attack, because I was like, no, like, I thought Claire was gonna die, and then Jace is gonna be the one that ends up dead, and he was alive, and he was fine, but like, that still scared me, because the way it ended totally was supposed to make you think that he was dead, and I just, like, was not happy about that, like, none of that at all. Alright, and after the battle, to wrap up this review, so entire battle ends with the Shadowhunters that are not a part of Horace Dearborn and his cohort. All of them lose, essentially, and all of those other Shadowhunters that are not a part of the cohort end up winning. A new council needs to be elected, because obviously Horace Dearborn ends up dying, and Alec is elected council, which I think is great, because I think he's going to be the perfect person to hold that position, and I'm very, 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 very happy for him, because I think he's very responsible and is going to do a great job in that position. And obviously Gia then ends up stepping down as Inquisitor. So, as I mentioned before, Diego is potentially going to be the one who's going to fill that position, which again, I think is another great person to be in charge of leadership on that front. So then we have this big, huge-ass plot twist that, again, no one, I think, saw coming, which is that Zara holds down Idris and Alicante, and all the other Shadowhunters get locked out of the city. So one of the cohort members, Amelia, essentially ends up killing herself, and all the cohort members are like, if this is how you want to play, if you're going to elect Alec, if, like, this is what's going to happen, we are all just going to kill ourselves, and obviously, like, that's not the way that this new Shadowhunter government wants to start out. So they're just all like, great, we'll leave, and they all leave Alicante, and so they no longer have access to Idris or Alicante, and that's just so interesting. But I think it's going to be fascinating to see how the Shadowhunters craft this new world, in which a lot of things are going to be running out of New York City, and to see a Shadowhunter world without Idris or Alicante, without the Shadowhunter capital, because obviously by the time we get to the end of the Wicked Powers, the Shadowhunters are going to have Idris and Alicante left. But I hate Zara Dearborn. I thought she was going to die in this book, and she didn't, and I was so upset about it because I was just ready to be done with her. So we're probably gonna have to see more of her in the Wicked Powers, which I'm not happy about at all because I just loathe her. But she does what she does, and I'm very ready for her to die because I loathe her so much, as, you know, most people do. But I was definitely very surprised that this happened. If it were me in that position, I just kind of would have been like, fine, you know, kill yourself. Like, if you're gonna be that petty and desperate, then like go ahead. And obviously that's horrible because I'm a person that has empathy, but I just like had it up to here with her and her garbage. So I just like could not believe that all of them just walked out. Like, I mean, that's probably like what I would have done, but I just was like so close to just being like, fine, die. Like, I just was not having it. So that ending, I don't think, like I said, anybody saw coming. I thought it was super unique for Cassie to just be like, okay, let's take away the Shadowhunter capital from these characters and have to see them completely and entirely rebuild, which I think is great because if we're going to rebuild the government, might as well just completely start anew. And I think Alec is going to be the perfect person to do this. And again, I think Diego is going to be a perfect person to be in that position of leadership. And I can't wait to read the Wicked Powers to see how all of this develops and builds as the years go on, because it's just incredibly fascinating and such a unique ending to this series. Alright, so I think that about covers it. I didn't talk about Helen and Adeline, which I guess I can very briefly talk about. So they are so adorable. I'm glad we get to see them back in Queen of Air and Darkness, and we get to see more of their characters. We get to sort of see them be the parents while Emma and Julian are away. And I love one of the main things that they do in Queen of Air and Darkness is this downworlder registry, and they essentially fake all these downworlder names and give them fake names like Taylor Swift, which I thought was hilarious and great comedic relief, but also a great way of being defiant to the cohort and their stupid, ridiculous demands. And the fact that they like want children of their own, I think is so adorable. I love their characters so much. They're, again, characters that I feel like we haven't seen a lot of because they've been exiled. So I'm excited to get to see more from them. I'm excited to get to see them have kids of their own and have a family of their own and get to be happy because they deserve that. And I just adore them. I also love how protective they are of each other. Like, I believe one of them, it's Helen, who's making oatmeal and she's trying to care for the kids and the kids don't like oatmeal or like don't want to eat it, and Adeline is just like, eat the damn oatmeal, and is just being super protective of Helen, and I just think it's adorable and I loved that and I thought it was great, and I'm very, very happy that those two characters are together and just happy and are able to be back with their family. Alright, so that's about wraps it up for my review of Queen of Air and Darkness by Cassandra Clare. So many things go on in this book and I feel like I barely scratched the surface. So if you have any thoughts and opinions and feels on Queen of Air and Darkness, definitely make sure you leave them down in the comments section below. This book was insane. I think if I were to rate it, I would give it like 4.8 stars because it was so close to 5 stars, but I feel like there definitely were some things that kind of threw me off that definitely didn't make it a 5-star read, but I still do really love this book. I think it's a really great conclusion, and it definitely doesn't feel like the end for this series. There's definitely so much more that is going to happen in the Wicked Powers that I'm so excited for. Thank you all so much for watching. I'm so excited to be back and filming videos. I want to try to be on here as much as possible, but obviously we'll have to see how that goes. I hope you all enjoyed Queen of Air and Darkness just as much as I did, and I hope you all are having a great 2019. Thank you all so much again for watching, and I'll see you all next time with a new video. Goodbye!